So today I'm going to talk to you about how I spent $10,000 on welding school, and I'm not really sure it was the best choice for me. So I'll give you my story and we'll see if it might not be the best choice for you either. Or it might be. Hey everybody, Austin here, another video. I'm gonna drink some hot tea real quick because it's chilly out here in the shop. But I'm going to talk to you guys about something that I think is a pretty important discussion, especially for all you guys who are just starting out in the welding field, or maybe you haven't even striked an arc yet, and you just want a little guidance on what's the best route to go. And I'm just going to speak a little bit on my personal experience. Got a floaty in my tea already. Personally, I started welding in my father's garage about when I was 13 or 14. I don't remember when. I really don't even remember the first thing I ever welded on. But I remember he did all the welding for our farm, and he had a trucking business. He pretty much took care of all the welding stuff needed to be done. I don't remember him outsourcing any of it. And as time went on, I got older, started helping him out in the garage, you know, handing him tools, holding a flashlight, and a few years down the line, soon enough, I was holding the stinger and striking a few arcs myself. But then, when I graduated high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I ended up going to community college. It just wasn't for me. Certain events transpired, and I ended up finding myself enlisting in a welding school. Not a top-of-the-line welding school, not a terrible welding school, I guess. I met some great people. Definitely learned what I needed to start in a welding career. It was just, there were better programs I could have went to, but today we're going to talk a little bit about the cost of welding school. I knew a little bit about welding going in. My dad had probably been welding for close to 30 years, just on his own. He wasn't an expert at it, I wouldn't say, but he knew enough to get by, and he showed me enough to get by. I had a couple friends who were in the vocational school program through our high school, or our trade program through our high school, whatever you might call it in your area, and they showed me a little bit, and I took a big interest into it, but honestly, I didn't feel comfortable going out and getting a job based off the knowledge I had, so I enlisted in a welding school, and it cost me about $10,000 or maybe even $12,000 by the time you count everything, and that's driving there, time off work, books, all that kind of stuff. The big thing for me was it turned into a networking thing. Is now I graduated with like 20 welders. I'm still close with a few of them. We talk jobs and all that. And it was something to put on a resume. I'm going to say this now. I'm not docking anyone who tries to go through a welding school. I just want to start exploring the options that maybe it's not necessarily for you. It's not the only way to become a welder. And I'm not going to say it's the best way to become a welder either. So, it all ends up on what I would say your situation. My situation, honestly, I probably could have found a job just about anywhere as a MIG monkey. We had a MIG welder when I was growing up. I can make the bead look pretty nice. In fact, the MIG portion of my school was really nothing great until we got into stuff like dual shield and spray transfer. That stuff was cool. Or MIG welding aluminum. But I'm fairly confident to say, just based off of years of being a self-taught welder and understanding that I don't know everything, and I still have some stuff to learn, I probably had enough rough experience to walk into a welding job and become a welder. In fact, one of my first welding jobs, I was actually surrounded by other guys who a few years ago bought a welder for their garage, used it, and then decided they really liked it, and now they're welders. but they didn't have to have a schooling. They paid $700 for a, you know, Lincoln 210 from Lowe's or Home Depot, whereas I spent $12,000 to go to a welding school, and we landed the same job. And I mean, this was about 2018, and it was almost an $18 an hour job for our area. That's not bad. That's pretty good. But like I said, we both took very different paths to get there. Not everyone can teach themselves, but looking back on it and crunching the numbers, if I would have just taken my $10,000, $12,000 and invested that into welding equipment, worked the same job I was as a grocery store manager for another year, came home and in my garage taught myself how to weld, I could land probably some pretty decent jobs. Especially because then I could take on side work, and that could have turned into its own thing. Now I might have hit a niche where I might have hit a niche somewhere where I didn't know how to do something, but you can always outsource it and go from there. The other option to get into welding is to go to a shop, tell them what you want to do, and see if you can push broom around for a few days. Another job I was working at, they actually hired a couple interns. And they would come in, they were 18, but I think they were still in high school even. They came in, pushed broom, cut metal for us off the bandsaw, moved stuff around, did a lot of the grunt work so us welders could just weld. And it really increased productivity. But at the end of the day, Friday, you know, if we were all caught up, generally each welder would take a turn taking both of them. And we'd teach them a little bit about welding. How much of it stuck, I don't know, but that is a good way if you have no experience and no money to just go to a welding shop. The worst they're going to tell you is no. You might run into a really rude guy or girl and they, you know, chew you out the building for wasting their time, but if they do that, just be thankful because you wouldn't want to do anything with them anyways. But that's a really, really good way to start. It kind of goes off the whole, and I'm not a pipeliner, so I don't really know, but the whole helper situation in the oil and gas industry, you know, a rig welder, from what I understand, I watch a lot of pipe welders and stuff on YouTube. Certain rig welders will have helpers on just to do stuff like that, and then late at night, whatever, when they're all done, they got time, the rig welder will actually help the helper learn to weld. And I've done that with a few guys just based off of mobile jobs. Bringing them in and, you know, they might help me move metal to a job or cut it all down to size, or they cut and I weld. But then at the end of the day, the end of the week, if I've got extra time, I got no problem loading them up with some safety equipment and letting them run a few beads. It's a really cool thing to be able to do. So that, for me, is another good way. So I guess the top 3 ways would be go to school and learn, buy your own welding equipment and teach yourself, or go to a shop and work for pennies on the dollar until you're comfortable enough to know how to weld and get out and either become a welder at that job or leave that job for another welding job. Another thing I'm going to talk about, and I see a lot of guys post, is, hey, I just got out of welding school, I've got blah 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 certification, I can't find a job. The truth be told, you can go become a certified welder, show up on the welding job, they're probably still going to give you a weld test. In fact, I only really ever had one job where someone was blown away that I'm a certified welder, and it was really only because, and I like him real well, so I'm not discrediting him or anything, he didn't know that much about welding. So he gave me a job, and on my first day, I reported to the head welder. I said, hey, my name's Austin, I'm a new welder here, and he said, okay, let's run a welding test. And that was the very first thing I did, was I ran a welding test. So you can become a certified welder, have that certification, and it might get you in a few doors, but they're going to want to ensure that you can weld anyways. And there's a huge span of different types of welding jobs, making anywhere from probably $12 an hour to $120 plus, you know. You're probably not going to self-teach yourself and land one of them 100 plus welding jobs an hour, 120 plus welding an hour, you know. But you might land one of them that's, let's say a 12, I'm lowballing there, to maybe even a 20. Like I said, the guy who taught himself how to weld using his welder in his garage a few years landed the same job I welded after coming out of welding school, and he spent a whole lot less money. The big thing is look in your area, look what's available, and get out and talk to some of these places, you know. You might walk in there and say, hey, my name's X and I want to learn how to weld. I don't have any knowledge myself, but can I push broom here for a few dollars and learn the trade? And if it's worth it, the guy might say, well, we can't really afford that right now, but if you want to enroll yourself in a welding program and come back, I'd gladly interview you for a job. It's probably happened before. The other thing is go someplace where maybe they're not going to weld all the time. A lot of farmers, if you can get a job on a farmhand, a lot of farmers will do their own welding. And you might be able to, if it's winter, off-season, whatever, or maybe even something might break and you might just be able to say, hey, if I come in, volunteer my time, can I watch over your shoulder and watch you weld? Because that's really what I'd like to do. If you get a farmer who probably really doesn't like doing it himself, he just does it to save money, and a young kid who wants to do it, he's probably going to show you how to do it, at least what he knows, and then you can take that knowledge and do the best you can. But for me, I even like the idea of having a little shop, set up safety equipment, just where you can practice on your own and stay relevant. It's not just a piece of knowledge that you have forever. You have the knowledge, but there's a lot of muscle memory that's involved with it. And you're really going to need to stay on top of your game to work your way up the resume to get those big paying jobs where it's 120 plus an hour. So, just a little food for thought, I guess, on that. I don't know. I really want to know what you guys want to know. Lately, our comment section's been kind of lacking in the whole hearing what you guys are doing, hearing what your thoughts are and all that. And I totally understand it's the holiday season. And honestly, you guys probably have something better to do than listen to me sit in my garage or in my truck and ramble on. And that's totally cool. But I want to hear what you guys have to think. How you broke into it. Did you teach yourself how to weld? Did a family member teach you? Did you go to a shop and offer your time for pennies when you should be getting paid nickels? Or did you go to a welding program, pay out money, and then land a good job to make that money back? And I'm definitely not saying that you can't make the money back from a welding school. I guess the big thing for me is I had some knowledge already. If I would have taken the money I spent on the welding school and invested in equipment, I'd have better equipment right now to make me money. When I decided I wanted to be a welder, I knew I always wanted to have my own business, but I only had so much money for equipment stuff, and that's why, I had a $1,200 welder and a generator for the first, I still do for the first few years because I shelled out money for a welding school. It's just how it happened. A lot of times I wonder, maybe I should have just bought the equipment, taught myself for a few years at home, and started taking on jobs as I felt comfortable. So I don't know. It's an interesting topic. I think it's a topic that will be here through the end of time. I really want to know what you guys think, how you broke into the welding world, what industry you're in, all that kind of stuff. I will say this though, because I'm not trying to make a video dissing schools. When I broke in, or excuse me, when I graduated from the welding school, let's say I spent $12,000 because it was probably that. I know it was 10, but you have driving and books and all that, and food and whatnot. So we're gonna say 12, and I don't mean this to brag. I don't mean this to, whatever. Say I'm so much better than anybody, because I'm not. I'm not the greatest welder in the world. But I invested $12,000 that landed me a job where I made $70,000 within the first year. So I did a 1-year program getting a welding certificate. So I spent $12,000 that year. The next year, I took that knowledge and I landed a $70,000 a year job, which was a lot better compared to the job I was making, like $32,000 a year. Made a $70,000 a year job with that knowledge that I spent 12 grand on. It was totally worth the money, and I made a lot of money that next year. But I worked for that money. That was a job that was mandatory 7 days, 10 hours a day. A lot of times welders were on 12s. They were just totally slammed with work. And I don't know. I mean, it was totally worth it for me to do it. It was a sacrifice for my girlfriend, now wife at the time. But it was totally worth doing because that kind of boosted us the money to do things I'm doing now, which is on an industry that I love, welding, and I have my own business, and I can take a little time out of my week to make these videos to hopefully share my experiences with another guy out there or girl, so that they can have success in their own right and love what they do every day, because there's something to be said about being able to wake up and be excited to go to work, so that's enough rambling for me for the day. Again, my name's Austin Anson. I do videos about welding lifestyles, how to weld, and equipment reviews, all that kind of stuff. Check out my channel for more. We're about to launch the first video in a, I don't know how many step program, video program on how to stick weld or shield metal arc weld. But I'm really excited for it. And it's kind of why I made that whole video, because I always thought if I would have just bought the equipment, I got to touch on one more point. If I would have just bought the equipment and got on YouTube and learned how we made, or learned off of YouTube, that would be so crazy. And I want to share a little story. That would be so good. I would have been able to save money and maybe even got to the same route, the same place I am now. So a crazy little video. How I found YouTube was my first day in a welding school. We watched videos on how to weld. That gives you a little knowledge of the quality welding school I went to, that on the first day, we had to sit and watch a video. A lot of you can probably guess who that video is. I don't know if I can give him a shout out, I guess it would be, but it was Jody with Welding Tricks and Tips. We watched videos for him for about an hour before we went in and reviewed equipment like we did. And if I would have just bought equipment, sat down, watched his videos, and done something like that, who knows? Might have saved myself a lot of money and still been able to land a good job. But anyways, guys, that is it. That is a done conversation. I rambled on way too long. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more. Until then, I'll see you on the next video.